Step 4. Preparing to fire at the target. Sam returned to Dave's house the next week. He was excited. He had found the ideal job. It met virtually all of his criteria and he was perfect for it. He knocked on the door at Dave's house. This time Dave opened it and greeted Sam warmly. Before he had even got through the door, Sam couldn't hold it in any longer. "I have found the perfect job and I'm ready to apply." It was a nice evening, so Dave showed Sam to the back patio where they would be working. Dave was glad that Sam had found the perfect job. That meant the exercises had worked, and he was focused on knowing what he wanted. Dave was concerned though, because these perfect jobs are in high demand and often do not turn out as advertised. Once they were seated, Dave began to speak. He deliberately chose his words carefully. "How comfortable are you with being uncomfortable?" Sam didn't quite understand the question and replied, "I'm not sure, but I don't think I like being uncomfortable." Dave then began to get to the point. "You see, Sam, I want to be honest and transparent with you. So there is an uncomfortable truth, that life isn't fair and nobody said that it would be. So a key stage in your development is to work on the skill of being okay when you're out of your comfort zone. Chances are you are going to be uncomfortable with a decision on most of your applications. That decision is a negative one, or more accurately, rejection. Being rejected is fine. It's great actually, because becoming comfortable with rejection is one of the greatest skills you can develop. They say that the difference between the master and the beginner is that the master has failed more times than the beginner has tried. So the quicker you can move on, the better." Sam didn't like the sound of this. What if he didn't get his perfect job? So he asked, "Are you saying that I won't get this job I found?" Dave responded, "No, I'm not saying that at all. We are going to prepare you so you have every possible chance. But remember, it is a process of exclusion and often luck plays a big role. I was once sifting through CVs with 2 other managers. The first wanted to interview a strong candidate because she went to the same good university as him and had done a graduate program at a top company. The next wanted to interview a candidate because he had done grade 8 piano and would probably be interesting to work with. Both potential candidates could probably do the job, but both selected for an interview would have been rejected if they were in the other manager's pile of CVs. Sam was beginning to understand and remarked, "So they are rejecting my application and not me. It is based on their perception, so it may have nothing to do with me. So I will focus on what I can control." Dave was delighted. Sam was smart and would do well. He picked up on things quickly, but Dave also knew there was a difference between intellectually understanding the decision and dealing with it emotionally, so wanted to give Sam some exercises to do over the next week. Dave explained, "Sam, there are some great simple exercises you can do to develop your resilience to feeling uncomfortable. The beauty of them is the more you suck, the better they are for you. You'll find that people actually are less concerned in what you are doing than you think." Dave went through some options and asked Sam to pick 2. Sam, eager to impress, picked 3. He would hand out takeaway menus outside his local kebab store. He would also go to his local Starbucks in his pajamas. And finally, he would ask 3 people at a conference he had managed to blag his way into for their business cards. The exercises sounded silly to do, but he was also not excited about doing them, which probably meant they would be beneficial. As Sam was going to a conference the week coming up, Dave wanted him to be prepared with an elevator pitch. So then Dave said, "The next bit of preparation is to write an elevator pitch, which is a short summary of you and what you are trying to achieve, that can be delivered in the time it takes to ride an elevator. I recently hired a graduate named Ben, who I met at a finance transformation conference in a room full of people generally over 30 years old. At 22, he was by far the youngest there. I had heard him ask an insightful question during the previous speech and happened to be standing next to him while getting a coffee. So I asked him what his background was. In 30 seconds, he coherently told me why he was here and what he wanted to achieve. I was immediately impressed, so I gave him my business card right on the spot. He had already shown me that he was prepared, took initiative, was intelligent, was focused. The list goes on, all based on one question and a short elevator pitch." Dave smiled to himself as he thought how well Ben had done already. Later, once hired, Ben had explained to him how he had spent hours preparing and practicing questions and elevator pitches. He also said that even though he looked confident, he was nervous as could be. Dave actually developed even more respect for Ben after that story. Sam could see that Ben had impressed Dave and was determined to do the same. He would work hard on his elevator pitch and prepare well for the conference he was attending. After a moment, Dave continued, "After your elevator pitch, the next thing you need to do is tidy up your digital footprint. Let's do a quick search of your name." Sam immediately felt awkward. The first image that came up was his Facebook profile picture of him at a fancy dress party, looking, should we say, a little worse for wear. Dave reassured Sam, "There's no problem with having a little fun, and we've all done things that may not be a great advertisement of ourselves. This is why this step is so important." After going through Sam's Facebook, LinkedIn profile, and a few others, Sam already had a list of 12 things that could potentially prevent him from getting interviewed, including a couple of spelling and formatting errors, as well a lack of profile picture on his LinkedIn account. He also needed to change his Facebook, as well as some security settings. All of this just hadn't been an issue while he was at university. "Now that you are more ready," said Dave, "it is time to create your CV. This needs to be more than revising a CV you did as a high school project. This needs to be the best thing you have ever created. Get 5, 10, 20 people to review it. You have to assume that the person potentially hiring you will only look at it for, let's say, 10 to 30 seconds. Remember, it is a process of exclusion, so leave out anything that creates questions. It needs to be bulletproof." Dave then gave Sam a CV checklist and explained that obviously this was his opinion. Different industries and people have different preferences and best practices. He needed to make sure he met these. They had made great progress, but Sam now had quite a bit of activity to do. So they left it at that and agreed to meet up later in the week. Before he left, Sam asked, "When will I be able to apply for that ideal job I found?" Dave replied, "If there is an immediate time constraint, do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'd suggest never apply for your best prospect first. A lot of application and interview questions tend to repeat, and your answers get better over time. So perhaps doing a few other applications first would help refine your answers." "Sounds good. I have a few weeks, so I will start with some other applications," Sam said. He wanted to make sure he had the best chance at getting his ideal job.